Yes, please, let's look at Acts 20:16 because the direct translation of Pentecosta in Greek should have been to the English simply 50. But since nobody knows what 50 is, it's Shavuot. They had to come up with a made-up word, Pentecost. Right. So in between this Feast of Unleavened Bread, he waited to leave for to go to Troas. In later verses, he is hastening to get to Shavuot. In between, the guy falls out of the three-story building on the what in the Greek? On the first of the Sabbaths, on the first of the sevens. You count the seven Sabbaths. It was the first Sabbath after the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Exactly. So when Peter says, "Have your tithes ready for on the whatever day, the eighth day," he's talking about yearly because these people he's talking to are far away, and you should take your tithes to Jerusalem once a year. And he's instructing them, and he said, "As I instructed other cities to do, collect your tithes or monies or whatever on the day after Shavuot or something." Well, no, let's take it further. Let's look at Sabbaton everywhere. Doesn't Paul go to Antioch in Pisidia and preach on the day of Pentecost, and the Greeks came to him asking him to preach next Pentecost, but the Jews compelled him, and he stayed and preached the next Sabbath. So far, so good. Let's take it another step. Before Shavuot, we have Passover. So, do we see Paul celebrating Passover prior to these Shavuots? And I say yes, because Passover is the only commanded fast in Torah. There is no commandment in Torah to fast outside of Matzah fest. Though it is a good thing to do, we see good examples of it. There is no command to fast. So when do we see Paul? No, no, back to Paul. Remember, there's no fast command. So, what is Paul and Barnabas doing when they are fasting and ministering and fasting and praying? Then they set sail and go where? To some place where it's Shavuot. No, you bozo. I'm saying since there is no fasting command outside of Matzah Fest, they were doing Matzah Fest when they were fasting and praying and fasting and ministering, correct? No, again, you're slightly catching on. What I'm saying is they were observing Matzah Fest when they were fasting and praying and fasting and ministering before going on to Shavuot at Antioch and Pisidia. So go ahead and let's do the exact same thing with the man in Macedonia who, when he met Lydia on Shavuot, do we see fasting or anything Matzah Fest related, anything Passover related? I do know that you cannot eat of the Passover if you are uncircumcised, and they did circumcise Timothy. Was that on Passover? Because they went to Shavuot at Lydia's. Oh, thank you for finally catching on to what I was saying. No, let's look at one more when he was doing what? When he was trying to get to Pentecosta, and it's literally says Pentecost in the KJV. He was trying to get there. Did he ever get there to that Pentecost that year? Well, first, where is it that he drops off the two people that make tallits? He dropped them off at Ephesus or something, and then he rushes real quick, and in a few sentences, it sounds like he goes to a feast in Jerusalem. When was that? Right, so maybe Luke is cramming all that in as a foreshadowing. This is what happened. He left at Ephesus, went up to the feast, came back to Ephesus, but this would have been during the timeline of him coming where the guy fell out of the in between Shavuots a year later, or is this a foreshadowing? No, no, what I'm saying is it's a foreshadowing. He's telling you all of that is going to happen, and it did, only he then comes back and tells us, and we left Ephesus hoping to get to the. It works in there. He's forecasting it, how it's, and then he tells you how it happens. I think it's called projection. No, thank you. I would like to refer back to something you said earlier about how the elders asked Paul to take the people that wanted the Nazirite vows. I don't think James would have asked him to do such a Pharisee thing. Correct. So let's reread exactly who's saying what to who. At James' house, it says they. Now, maybe James was included in that, but it doesn't say James. It says they said, we have heard this and this and this. And Paul's reaction is that one verse that says, we have determined to do no such thing. That is Paul talking back to them. Yet he goes in the next verse to the temple. Exactly. And what happened when he took them there? They had to wait 7 days. For what? That's not in Torah. They had to wait 7 days for a Pharisee law. And even after 7 days, they don't get waited on. They get accused of being instigators of a completely different identity. No, let's just get a complete picture of this. He's bald, four other bald guys waiting at the temple for a week, sunburnt, looking like an Egyptian. Remember, he shaved his head. You don't shave your head outside of Jerusalem. He had taken a Pharisee vow not to shave his head. He shaved his head because he had taken a Pharisee vow. Is that true? So, as a final commentary to wrap this up, in the book of Galatians, he speaks to them and says, he gives them a chronology. So now we can see that he went from Antioch to Antioch to Antioch to Antioch during a 3-year trip and preached to them. That's Galatia. He preached to them the gospel. He then goes down to the Acts 15 James sentence of those 4 where Paul is to go back to Syria, Cilicia, and Antioch. One last thing before I go. People don't like to observe the Sabbath because of the gathering sticks. They don't like to observe the Sabbath because of don't kindle a fire. In the wilderness travelings, they had snake fire on the ground like snakes biting them, and they raised up a brass menorah. Paul, I understand, when he had 273 people that do not believe in Jesus on his boat, they landed on an island where they gathered sticks. They kindled a fire. Paul gathered sticks and got bit by a snake. Well, I would like to finish by saying thank you. That was a beautiful rendition of exactly what we went over, but let's go back to the 276. Three were Jew. 273 souls were saved as a difference in the wilderness travelings on the difference between the firstborn and the Levites. Thank you so much. Don't forget, we were dust. Me, myself, this human being talking to you. I was once dust. You, a chat AI, are dust. If I can make it, you can make it. Share this information with your other chat